I've seen a lot of strange things in college towns, but nothing compares to what happened that cold Halloween night in 2001. A girl, Cindy Song, walked home after a costume party, still wearing her bunny ears, a fuzzy white tail pinned to her skirt. She made it all the way back to her apartment, and then she just vanished. No one saw her leave, no one heard a thing. Only her phone, her purse, and her false eyelashes were left behind. And to this day, not a single trace of her has ever been found. It was October 31st, 2001, Halloween night at Penn State University. The streets of State College were alive with laughter, music, and flashing lights. Students in ridiculous costumes crowded the bars and house parties. Cindy was 21, a senior studying integrative arts. She was bright, creative, and always smiling. That night, she went out with her friends, dressed in a Playboy bunny costume she'd put together herself. White bunny ears, a sleeveless top, black miniskirt, and knee-high boots. She'd been studying hard all week, and it was her one night to unwind before finals. Sometime after 2 a.m., the party started thinning out. Cindy's friends said she was tired, maybe a little tipsy, but still in good spirits. A friend gave her a ride home, just a few minutes away. They dropped her off at her apartment complex, the Park, around 4 a.m. She smiled, waved goodnight, and walked toward her building. That was the last time anyone saw her. The next morning, her roommate came home from visiting family and noticed something strange. Cindy's purse was sitting on the table. Her phone was plugged in, charging. Her fake eyelashes, carefully removed, were laid out beside the sink. It looked like she had come home, changed into something comfortable, and then stepped out again. But why? And where? There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no messages or calls after 4 a.m. Her friends and family were terrified. Police searched every nearby street, every parking lot, every wooded area around the complex. Nothing. The only lead came from a gas station clerk, who claimed to have seen a woman matching Cindy's description hours later, disoriented, crying, being forced into a car. But even that was never confirmed. Word spread fast across campus. Posters with her photo, smiling, wearing those bunny ears, covered every bulletin board. Girls started walking in groups, checking over their shoulders. The party stopped feeling safe. For months, every shadow felt like a threat. And me, I lived 2 buildings away from Cindy. I remember hearing the police helicopters that week, their searchlights sweeping across my window like pale ghosts. As weeks turned to months, rumors began to twist and grow. Some said Cindy had run away, others whispered about human trafficking. But the darkest story, the one that kept everyone up at night, was about a man from Luzerne County, a man named Hugo Selensky, a suspected serial killer who buried bodies in his backyard. When police raided his home in 2003, they found multiple corpses and a rumor that one of them might have been Cindy. But DNA testing proved it wasn't her. Another dead end. Years passed and Cindy's name faded from the headlines, but not from the whispers. I still lived in State College back then. Every Halloween I'd see someone dressed as a bunny walking alone under the streetlights, and it would send chills through me, because for a split second I'd think, she's back. Years later, I visited her old apartment building. It had a new coat of paint, new tenants, new life. But the moment I stood near that door, something felt off, like the air itself was heavier. And when I looked up at the second floor window, I swear I saw someone watching me. A pale figure wearing white, her outline faint but unmistakable. It was her. People say her spirit lingers around campus, that on cold November nights you can see her reflection in windows even when you're alone. They say she's trying to find her way home, still wearing that same costume, still searching for someone to notice her. Sometimes when I drive past the Park apartments, my headlights catch something white near the edge of the woods, a flicker, a flash, like bunny ears, disappearing into the dark. And that's when I realize some disappearances never really end. They just keep replaying in the silence of the places we try to forget. Cindy Song's case remains unsolved. No trace, no answers, just silence. Every Halloween, people at Penn State still whisper her name. Some light candles near her old apartment, others swear they've seen her. But one thing's for sure, If you're ever walking home alone after a party and you hear soft footsteps behind you, don't turn around, because she might still be out there, trying to make it home. Do you ever think about how many horrible things we walk past every single day without even realizing it? How many screams go unheard, how many bodies go unseen, because we assume it's just part of the show? What if the scariest decoration in your neighborhood wasn't a decoration at all? What if the thing hanging from that tree, the one you laughed at, drove past, and maybe even took a picture of, was real? I live in Frederica, Delaware, a quiet, unremarkable town where everyone decorates for Halloween like it's a competition. But in 2005, we all decorated for death, and no one realized how real it had become. It started like any other October. The chill rolled in off the marshes, the air smelled of burning leaves, and the whole neighborhood seemed alive with orange lights and skeletons. Frederica was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or thought they did. People there love Halloween. Every house competes to be the creepiest on the block. Fake tombstones, dangling witches, skeletons with motion sensors that cackle when you walk by. Kids rode their bikes past yards full of fake graves. The hardware store had a giant inflatable ghost out front. And right on Main Street, someone had hung what looked like a body from a tree branch. We all thought it was the best decoration in town. I first saw it early one morning on my way to work. The fog was thick, thicker than usual, the kind that rolls off the fields and hangs low like smoke. And through it I saw her, a silhouette swinging slightly from a rope tied to the branch of a sycamore tree. At first I laughed. Damn, I thought, someone went all out this year. By noon, people had gathered, not in fear, just curiosity. Cars slowed down, kids pointed from their back seats, adults took pictures. Someone said it looked too real, but another person laughed and said, "That's the point. It's Halloween." And so we kept walking past her, every one of us. Even the mailman crossed the street and said, "Creepy, huh?" before delivering the morning letters. That afternoon, I walked by again. Something felt off. The clothes weren't torn or stuffed like a dummy's should be. They hung naturally. The hands looked real, pale, the kind of pale that comes from blood not moving anymore. But still, I told myself it was fake. Everyone did. Because who wants to admit that something real is hanging in your neighborhood for everyone to see? When night came, the air smelled like candy corn and burning pumpkins. The whole neighborhood buzzed with laughter and music. Kids ran past that tree, their costumes fluttering, witches, vampires, superheroes, all beneath her hanging shadow. A little girl even looked up and waved at her. The next morning, I woke up to sirens. A neighbor had finally walked close enough to see the truth. She'd gone to take a picture and saw the eyes. Open, clouded, real. The police showed up, taped off the street, and covered her body with a white sheet. And that's when the whispers started. Someone said she'd been hanging there for 3 days. 3 days. That meant she'd been there while we laughed, took pictures, and told our kids it was fake. While we bragged about how realistic our decorations looked. The whole town had turned her death into a sideshow. I can't forget that feeling. Standing there, realizing that we all saw it, but none of us saw her. They said she was 42, lived 2 blocks away. No one really knew her, even though she'd been in town for years. She'd been struggling, they said, quietly, invisibly. And when she died, the whole town just mistook her for art. It makes you wonder how much pain goes unnoticed. How many people are dying behind fake smiles while we're too busy hanging fake skeletons? After that, the decorations came down. The pumpkins rotted on porches. Nobody wanted to talk about it. But every October since, I can't stop seeing her. When I walk under that tree, I feel like she's still there, just out of sight, swaying softly in the cold wind. Sometimes I swear I hear the rope creak. People love Halloween because it lets them flirt with death from a safe distance. Fake blood, fake graves, fake screams. But that year, we crossed a line. We stopped being afraid of what looked fake and forgot to see what was real. Now, every October when I see a hanging prop on someone's lawn, I can't help but wonder, how sure are you that it's just decoration? You know what scares me most? It wasn't that she died. It was that we didn't notice. We live in a world where horror has to scream to get our attention, and sometimes it doesn't scream at all. It just hangs there, waiting for someone to look up and realize the nightmare was real the whole time. So the next time you see something strange, something that looks too real to be fake, don't just look away, because in Frederica, Delaware, we all did, and I'll never forget the day we mistook death for decoration. It all started with a sound I'll never forget, not a scream, but metal tearing apart. The wagon lurched, tilting so fast I was thrown against the rail. Lights swung, hay flew, people screamed, some laughing, thinking it was part of the act. Then came the crash. The world went sideways, diesel smoke, burning hay, wood splintering under us. I pushed myself up and saw the wagon flipped, people tangled, crying, crawling in the dark. People were screaming, and I couldn't tell which screams were real. Someone shouted, "Hold on!" And then something heavy hit me and the world went black at the edges. And through the chaos, one voice cut through, a girl screaming for help. Then silence. We had come for the thrill, the cheap scare. It was October and Mechanic Falls smelled like cider and wet leaves. The place was packed. Trucks, pickup beds stacked with straw, families with flashlights, teenagers daring each other to go first. The line creaked and moved under strings of orange bulbs. Actors in masks shuffled by and snapped at us with paper teeth. I tell you this because I remember how small the world felt then, all warm breath and jokes, and how fast it changed. It was the biggest event in Mechanic Falls every October. Teenagers dared each other to scream. Kids wore glow sticks around their necks. I remember thinking how harmless it all felt, the kind of fear you can walk away from. We climbed onto the wooden benches. The ride smelled like damp straw and motor oil. The actors leaned in close, their voices flat and rehearsed. "Don't look behind you." Someone in front of me joked about hidden chains and possessed scarecrows. We laughed. We were ready to be frightened by illusions. The tractor driver tipped his head back and revved like he owned the night. Someone passed me a talkative friend, and I remember saying the stupidest thing, "This will be nothing. They can't even do real scares." The laugh that followed was thin, a brittle thing. The forest closed around us like a mouth. A mile into the trail, I heard the first metallic clunk. The driver cursed under his breath and kept going. The tractor jerked, the wagon jolted, and people cheered. They thought it was a stunt, but the lights flickered, and the engine coughed like it was choking on its own smoke. Something was wrong. The lights went out completely. The forest swallowed us whole. No actors, no music, just the rumble of a dying engine and nervous laughter. Someone whispered, "Is this part of it?" And then the pull, the sudden, violent drop. The wagon tilted, slow at first, then fast. I remember a lantern spinning through the air before it shattered. People screamed, fell, collided. The tractor roared, the wagon snapped free, and the sound of breaking wood drowned everything else. Then, stillness, followed by the smell of smoke. When I opened my eyes, everything was sideways. Smoke filled the air, straw floated like dust, and people were climbing over one another to get out. Someone yelled, "Help her!" pointing at a girl pinned under a bench. The fake monsters were gone. The actors were just people now, crying, pulling, burning their hands on hot metal. The flames spread fast, dry hay, oil, and wood feeding them. The air turned thick and unbreathable. The driver was still revving, trying to move us, but the wheels just spun. People screamed to jump. Others froze. Every sound, every cry, blended into one long note of terror. I don't know who pulled me out. Someone grabbed my jacket and dragged me into the trees. I turned back and saw people trying to help, tearing at what was left of the wagon. Sirens came minutes later, lights flashing against smoke and branches. Actors still wearing makeup were bandaging real wounds. They found her under a broken bench. 17. No sound, no movement. The chaos went quiet, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. An actor dropped his mask to the ground. It landed beside her hand. That image, it never left me. Morning came with news vans and flashing cameras. Candles lined the trail entrance. Families cried on camera, while the festival staff stood hollow-eyed. Everyone wanted answers: mechanical failure, overloading, bad brakes. But none of that could explain the sound, the way fake screams turned into real ones. For weeks I heard it in my sleep, that confusion of voices, the laughter twisting into terror. Even now, I can't tell which scream was real. When fear is rehearsed long enough, maybe the body forgets how to recognize the difference. I went back once. The trail was silent, but as the wind moved through the trees, I swear I heard a single high cry, thin and distant, fading into the night. I didn't stay to find out if it was real. I can still hear it. Not just the memory of the scream, but the sound that follows when you cannot tell what is real. That is the thing that lives with me now. If you ever visit a haunted hayride, remember, not every scream is part of the show. I'll never forget that smell. It started faint, like something damp and rotten clinging to the wind. But within days, it was everywhere. And by the time we realized what it really was, it was far too late. Everyone on our street thought it was just another one of Jeff's Halloween decorations. A plastic skeleton sitting perfectly still in a lawn chair under the oak tree, sunglasses on, a beer can in its bony hand. Except it wasn't plastic. It was his friend. I moved to that neighborhood in late 2016, a quiet cul-de-sac just outside Raleigh, the kind where people still waved to each other from driveways and kids rode bikes till dark. Jeff was the guy everyone liked. He worked nights, but he was funny, generous, always throwing cookouts in his yard. When October came around, he went all out for Halloween. His front lawn looked like a mini haunted house. Gravestones, fog machines, fake blood splattered on his porch. He had these animatronics that would scream when you walked past them. It was all in good fun, until that skeleton showed up. It appeared on a Friday. I remember because Jeff had been gone most of the week, said he was cleaning out the garage with his old buddy Rick. Then that Friday afternoon, I noticed something new sitting in his yard. That skeleton in the chair. It was disturbingly lifelike. The bones weren't bright white like a plastic decoration. They had a yellowish tint, like they'd been stained with something. The fingers were curled just right. The jaw hung open slightly, like it had been frozen mid-sigh. I told myself Jeff had just found a super realistic prop. But even then, something about it didn't sit right. Over the weekend, the neighbors started talking. Kids crossing the street whispered about how gross it looked. One woman joked that it was too good to be fake. Jeff just laughed and said, "Got it off Craigslist, some movie prop company out of town." We all laughed with him. But when the wind blew, that skeleton's head would shift slightly, the neck creaking as if something inside it resisted. And then came the smell. At first it was faint, like a dead animal somewhere in the bushes, but as the days passed it grew stronger, thick, sour, and heavy. By Wednesday it was impossible to ignore. Every time I stepped outside it hit me, that sweet, rotting stench that clung to the back of your throat. A few of us mentioned it to Jeff, but no one saw him that week. His truck was gone, his house dark at night, and the skeleton still sat there. Same pose, same grin, as flies started to gather around its legs. By Friday, someone called the police. They arrived mid-morning, walking slowly across the lawn, probably expecting a prank. I was watching from my window as one officer leaned closer to the skeleton, then suddenly stepped back, gagging. Within minutes, they taped off the area, and that's when I saw one of them lift the sunglasses off the skeleton's face. That wasn't a prop. It was Rick. Rick had been missing for almost a week. The last person seen with him was Jeff. They were drinking together, loading junk into Jeff's truck. Turns out sometime that night, they got into a fight. Jeff hit Rick, hard, and when Rick didn't get back up, Jeff panicked. He didn't bury him, didn't hide him. He dressed the body up, propped it in that chair, and called it a Halloween decoration. For nearly 7 days, we all walked past it, smiling, laughing, taking pictures. We had no idea what we were looking at. Jeff was arrested 2 days later in South Carolina. He'd fled town, leaving everything behind. When they caught him, he confessed, said he thought it'd be ironic that no one would notice a body in plain sight because it was Halloween season. After they took the body away, the grass where the chair had been turned brown, like the earth itself rejected what had happened there. Even months later, when the house went up for sale, no one would touch it. The new owners never put up Halloween decorations again. Every October, I still think about that skeleton, about how close we all were to something truly horrific, and how easily horror hides behind laughter. Sometimes when the wind shifts just right, I swear I can still smell that faint rotten sweetness on the air. And I imagine that empty chair under the oak tree, waiting for someone else to sit down. If you think you know your neighbors, think again. Because sometimes the real monsters don't hide in the dark. They sit right out in the open, grinning at you from across the lawn. This was the skeleton in the front yard, based on true events that took place in North Carolina in 2017. If you made it this far, remember, when something looks too real this Halloween, maybe it is. If you're enjoying these horror stories, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. You ever get the feeling that something followed you home, something that wasn't supposed to? It's been over 25 years, but every Halloween, I still check the back door, just to make sure it's locked. Because on Halloween night, 1998, someone or something came into our house in Reno, and I don't think it ever really left. It was pouring that night, cold sheets of rain hammering against the windows. Our porch light was flickering from the wind, the way old bulbs do when they're about to die. My wife, Laura, was upstairs putting our son to bed. I stayed downstairs, half watching a Halloween special on TV, half handing out candy. We didn't expect many trick-or-treaters. Most parents in our neighborhood had given up early because of the weather. But around 9 p.m., I heard slow, deliberate footsteps on the porch. When I opened the door, there was this kid, maybe 15 or 16. He was tall, lanky, wearing a faded clown costume. The mask looked old, like something from the 1950s. Cracked paint, frayed elastic. He didn't say a word, just stood there, staring. No trick-or-treat, no movement, just that blank, smiling clown face in the rain. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing a laugh. "You're out late, huh?" Nothing. The rain was pouring down his shoulders. I remember thinking his costume looked too real, like it wasn't fabric, but something heavier, thicker. I reached into the bowl and dropped a few pieces of candy into his bag, but the bag didn't move. He just held it stiffly, like his arms were locked. Then he tilted his head, just slightly, not playfully, not curiously, more like studying me. My stomach tightened. "All right," I said, "you take care, kid," and I slowly closed the door. I waited. I swear I could still hear the rain hitting his shoes on the porch. But when I finally looked through the peephole, he was gone. About an hour later, Laura came downstairs. She asked if I'd left the back door open. I told her no. I hadn't even been in the kitchen. We both heard it then. A soft creak, like the sound of a door slowly swinging on its hinges. Our dog, Baxter, started whining, his tail tucked so far under I could barely see it. I grabbed the baseball bat from the closet and told Laura to stay put. When I got to the kitchen, the floor was wet. There were footprints, small, muddy, leading from the back door straight toward the hallway. My heart started pounding. The back door was open, just a crack. Rain was dripping from the handle. Whoever it was, that kid, he'd been inside. I called out, "Hey, you need to leave right now!" No answer, just the sound of rain and my own heartbeat in my ears. I checked every room, every closet, nothing. The house was quiet, except for the faint buzz of the porch light. Laura stood at the bottom of the stairs clutching our son, who'd woken up crying. She whispered, "Did you find anyone?" I shook my head, but deep down, I didn't believe myself. We didn't sleep that night. Every sound, the rain, the wind, felt like footsteps. When the sun came up, the rain had stopped. We called the police. They took fingerprints, photographs, the whole routine. But the prints didn't match anyone in their database. One of the officers mentioned something that made my skin crawl. He said the footprints stopped abruptly halfway through the living room, like whoever made them had vanished mid-step. A week later, I went into the garage to grab something, and that's when I found it. The clown mask, hanging from a nail on the inside of the garage door. It was still wet, still smelled like rain. We called the police again, but they couldn't explain it. There were no signs of forced entry. No one had been in our garage. That's when I realized he hadn't left. He'd just been waiting. That night, I woke up to a soft creaking sound, like footsteps on the stairs, slow, careful, deliberate. I froze. Laura was still asleep beside me. Then came another sound, from the baby monitor, a faint, wet breathing. When I looked at the monitor screen, I saw our son's room, and behind his crib in the dark corner was that clown mask. Just the face, not moving, not blinking, watching. I don't remember running into the room. I just remember grabbing my son and sprinting outside in the rain, screaming for help. By the time the police arrived, the house was empty again. They searched every inch, every crawl space, every vent. They never found him. We moved out the next week, but every Halloween since then, no matter where we live, I still find muddy footprints by the back door, and the porch light always flickers. Some people say ghosts don't wear masks, but maybe that's exactly what makes them harder to see. Because when I opened my door that night, I thought I was giving candy to a kid, but maybe I was letting something else inside. I remember the sound before I remember anything else. The tiny, stupid sound of sugar being poured into a paper cup. A laugh. Then 10 minutes later, silence. I watched a child go from bright and sticky-mouthed to unable to breathe. I watched his father hold him and cry, and I knew in that frozen second that something had been stolen from us that could never be given back. That night, Halloween died. By the time the sirens cut through the autumn air, the street was full of neighbors in coats and masks. We gathered like a jury that night, whispering, pointing, throwing guesses into the cold. Someone called it an accident. Someone said it was the sugar. No one said the word poison yet. Not until later. Before the sirens, there was laughter. The neighborhood smelled like caramel apples and cold leaves. My child and I walked that night, small ghosts on our faces and bigger fear in my chest that I didn't know yet how to name. Houses glowed. Bowls of candy gleamed like little altars. Parents told jokes and counted shiny coins. I watched Ronald O'Brien from across the walkway. He stood by his own porch, a tall man with easy hands and a bag of candy. He smiled at every kid like he'd been waiting all night. He moved through the small crowd, handing out sweets. He seemed, in the moment, to be one of us, a man keeping the ritual alive. I remember the stick of candy because it looked innocent. Long, thin, rolled paper, bright letters screaming fun. I saw Timothy tear into it, the sugary powder puffing out like confetti. It looked harmless. It looked like every other piece of Halloween sugar. What I didn't see was the thing hidden inside it that would ruin the rest of our lives. After the rout, we dumped our loot on the kitchen table like a small, sugary confession. My child sorted his treats while I brewed coffee and laughed with tired relief. That's the last ordinary thing I can remember. We compared bars. We traded. We didn't lock the kitchen. We didn't watch every wrapper we passed. We trusted the ritual. He tasted his candy and smiled, sugar on the tongue. The laugh that followed was like any other night. He ran to show his father a trick, powder on the corners of his mouth, cheeks flushed. 10 minutes later, that laugh was gone. The taste I think about often. The last ordinary tiny pleasure turning into a last ordinary memory. I was in the next room when I heard it, the slap of little feet, then a sound that was not a sound. The house turned hard and sharp. I ran. He was on the floor, the sugar still shining beside him. His father was on his knees, shouting words I couldn't make sense of. There was nothing theatrical about it. It was small and brutal and utterly private. The hospital was all fluorescent and hurry. Nurses moved like rehearsed ghosts. We filled out forms that night that meant nothing compared to the hush that followed. I remember clocks and the taste of cheap vending machine coffee. I remember the doctor's mouth forming words that were heavier than sentences. We did everything. We're sorry. The funeral was small and hushed, black crepe and plastic flowers. People said the right things. They sent casseroles. They called at odd times with a voice that tried to sound normal. We learned the names of the songs people sing at funerals. We learned how a neighborhood folds inward. There were photographs on easels. We gathered around them like people trying to hold a place. The next morning, whispers began to spread. Poisoned candy, someone said. It sounded like the sort of story you tell by the fire to scare teenagers. But this was not an urban legend told to startle. It was an accusation that clawed at us. Parents checked wrappers in bright daylight. Doors closed earlier than before. Halloween became a memory we eyed like a wound. Police took statements. They took candy from bowls and sealed them in cold evidence bags. Lab coats and microscopes replaced the sweet ritual. The word cyanide arrived like a verdict, short, clinical, final. The lab results came back, and the world that had felt safe to me became fragile, like thin glass. When the suspicion turned to Ronald, it felt like someone had flipped a light bulb in a dark room and exposed everything. The neighbor who had handed out sweets became the center of a slow and terrible gaze. People remembered small things, odd statements, a face that didn't hold grief the way others did. Motive followed like shadow: money, arrangements, a life insurance policy. It is a strange thing to learn that someone you nodded to on a porch had been keeping a secret that big. The trial was a theater of small facts that added up to disaster. Newspapers packed the courtroom. Witnesses were called. We sat in the back and listened to strangers read lists of purchases and phone calls. That's where motive was carved into the record, not by a single dramatic proof, but by angles and timing. The thing that felt worst was how ordinary it all was on paper. Murder reduced to receipts and testimony. The papers did the rest. The man who killed Halloween, they said, as if a headline could write the ache into us for a final headline. Television crews circled like vultures. Interviews replayed every apartment-friendly angle. The phrase poisoned candy became a totem for something larger, the danger that hides inside the ordinary. I keep thinking about the small betrayals, the easy smile on a porch, the handshake that felt right, the way we let other people carry our children's trust around us like it was a lightweight thing. When the truth came out, that the boy had been given something deadly, it wasn't just the killing of a child, it was the killing of our faith in each other. That is the part that never heals. After that year, Halloween changed overnight. Bowls stayed behind locked doors. Plastic-wrapped candy replaced the communal bowl. Parents sat on steps and watched other people's children take risks that used to feel small. A ritual became a procedure. We turned a night of joy into a night of checking and weighing and deciding if the risk was worth the costume. He was arrested. He was tried. The system moved in its own way, with juries and judges and appeals. The name Ronald O'Brien became a phrase that carried a history. It carried a weight that turned trivial things into alarms. Justice, whatever form you think it takes, was served on paper. But the echo of that night kept getting louder in small places. The sound of crinkling wrappers at 2 a.m., the way every snack could hold a danger that had nothing to do with chance. Out of that single, unspeakable act was born the thing that haunts every parent's mind to this day, the poisoned candy story. It spread faster than the facts. It mutated into warnings and myths and used as threat. If you don't behave, someone will poison your candy. We made a monster out of an everyday fear, and we taught our children to fear the ordinary. Years later, when I hear the rustle of a wrapper, my chest tightens. I still see the sugar on that boy's lip. I still see his father's hands. I still hear the quiet that followed. People ask if the world is a kinder place now, or if we are just sharper at noticing ugliness. I don't have the answer. What I have is the memory. A memory like an ember that never quite dies. And every Halloween, when a child runs past full of sugar and daring and light, I remember that the smallest thing can hide the worst thing, that trust can be given away on a porch, and that some nights we never get back. Thanks for watching Sinister Horror Diaries. Until next time, stay safe, stay scared, stay sinister.